Can you describe a time when you were faced with severe adversity or a time that you had to overcome something that was just wildly unexpected?
There was a moment in my kitchen, I'll never forget that day, where there was every once in a while I would have this feeling of something I couldn't quite identify that was upsetting me. I was in the kitchen, and all of a sudden I just started crying and crying and crying, and all I was crying about was my father. I had never had any emotions about him, and I met him when I was in my 20s. And we got to know each other over about a period of 3 or 4 years, and he died suddenly of a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
And when he died, it was like, he died.
Yeah.
But there was no emotions
Sure.
attached to that whole relationship.
Yeah.
And it was that day, later in life, late in my 50s, that I felt it. I felt that pain that was buried my whole life.
Yep.
Of not having had that kind of love that a father can give you, that kind of pure, safe place. And I cried about that. I cried about him dying. It was like...
All of it.
All of it. It was like cathartic. I needed to get all of that
Sure.
out of me. But what I didn't realize was how not having a father that just gave you that fatherly hug, that fatherly love, that's the part that was broken.
Yeah. It's huge.
It's huge.
It's kind of always freaks me out a little bit just how formative the first 8 years of your life are.
Yes.
It's crazy, right? You think that we're these smart, articulate, incredible creatures, which we are, but it all hinges on the first few years of being alive.
Yeah.
It almost doesn't seem fair, because that's not a choice that you made. That's a choice that other people make for you. That's tough.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah,
It's tough.
And I have, the experience of not having a pleasurable youth either at all. And I often think of other people who were in the same boat or a similar boat that I was in. And there's a pivotal moment for some people, and some people, they never come out of it. What do you think that it was in that kitchen that you just let your...
I was I had my headsets on, and I was listening to a gospel song that I loved at the time. And it was just playing over and over and over again. And the song was amazing. That was the title of the song.
Okay.
It was talking about how amazing God is. Da-da-da. That's the point in my life where I know I needed something else, and I didn't know what it was, and I sought the Lord, and that's who I needed.
Was it a friend, a colleague, or a commercial? What was it that made you say, okay, it's time for me to seek out, the enhance your religious beliefs?
Well, my life was falling apart from my perspective.
But you could have turned to drugs, alcohol.
That's right. And I had a couple of friends along the way whose life, actually my best friend, Jackie, who's passed away now, my best friend had gone through some things in her life, and then she had accepted Jesus, and then she came to me and she told me, you got to do this. And I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I don't know what that is, but I don't want that. I'm sure I won't be able to dance. I won't be able to do anything. So I didn't at that time.
If I could, there is an icky factor typically associated with what you just said. You feel like if you're going to take this on, whether you're religious or whatever it is, with any new thing, especially when it involves a pretty drastic life change.
God.
Right.
That's a big one.
That's a big one.
That's a big one.
That's a big one.
That's a name that clears rooms.
Yeah,
when you
but
start
it was
talking about Jesus, it can clear a room.
Sure.
It's a big thing. I wasn't ready
Mm.
for that. I didn't understand it. I didn't want any parts of it.
Yeah.
And then along the way, I would say over the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, I had a couple of other friends that had they're changed. You know, something had happened in their life, and they made a decision,
Right.
like that. And so now here I am, panic attacks. I mean, claustrophobic, bad. I couldn't get to work hardly.
Wow.
I had to start driving to work because I couldn't get on the Metro North.
Yep. No
New
subways,
York.
no tunnels.
No subways. I would come home. I would come up, get out of work, go down to the subway, come out, and go to the ATM and get money and take a cab up to Westchester.
Which gets expensive.
Gets expensive, yeah.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get in the subways.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah. So that was a whole nother part of my life. And then I was searching, but I didn't know what to do. And so I had a friend, this girlfriend of mine called me. I hadn't talked to her in a while. And she says, "Oh, Barrie, I'm going to this church. You should go visit this church. It's like amazing." So then I'm thinking, maybe I need to try church.
What do you have to...
Everything, nothing else I'm trying to do right now is
Right.
working at all.
Yeah.
I'm living in a beautiful house on a lake
Yeah.
in Westchester, 60-acre lake. Beautiful. It was a townhome.
Yeah.
Another lovely place.
Nice.
And so that's what started my journey in that direction. I went to the church that she had suggested, and it was interesting because of the claustrophobia. When I went in, it was a parking lot full. It was the church sat 3,000. It used to be a dinner theater in the round. Mm-hmm. Then they had to convert it to a church. So big place. And so when I saw this parking lot with hundreds and hundreds of cars, I'm like, if I can't get out of wherever they seat me, I'm not staying.
Are you like backing your car in for a quick exit?
Yeah.
And, I'm out.
I'm out. So I go in. As it turned out, the way the sanctuary was set up, because there used to be a theater in the round, there was lots of space in every aisle. So I had no problem finding somewhere to sit that I could easily get out of.
Yeah.
So for the next year and a half, I would go occasionally, then a little more often, because I was hearing things I had never heard before. The very first thing I heard that Sunday, the only thing I remember, he said that Jesus died that we might have life and have it more abundantly. And I was like, wow. I started going a little bit more frequently because nothing else was helping change anything. And I quit my job.
Really?
Yeah.
Why
I quit my job.
What was it that made you quit your job?
It was the stress that suddenly hit me in a job that I was our era was very well respected during that time frame. We built a lot of stuff that's still running today. And now there was a shift it was Solomon Brothers. There was a shift in the industry that was bringing in people that were younger and had these big ideas on what they were going to do. Now I'm in my 40s, and they're telling us we're old. We're the old school. I'm like, wait, are you kidding me? We built all of this.
Right.
So they came in, sold them a bill of goods. They were going to replace this, replace that. Never did. Yep. And my peers, my friends, my gods were leaving. They were getting pushed out. People that I highly respected were getting pushed out. And so all of a sudden, I found myself having these panic attacks. And just this fear of anything.
Sure.
Yeah. So I got in a plane, flew to California, which was horrible.
A tube 30,000 feet in the air.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the doors closed.
Yeah.
I was done.
Sorry about it.
Yeah. But I had to go tell my mother.
That, hey, I quit.
I quit this job. And I knew she was going to ask me, was I crazy?
Yeah.
Because of the nature of the job,
Sure.
everything about the job. And my position there, the money there, everything. But I had to leave. I couldn't find out how to even to get in there anymore.
So let me ask you, before all of this happened, but you're saying you're in your 40s.
Yes.
Right. You make this drastic life change. You leave this job in the industry that you've been in. How long were you working in that industry? When did you start in, I guess, the financial industry?
That would have been 22 years.
You were there for 22 years. Okay.
That's where I went into technology when I got out of college.
So
into technology.
What did you go to college for?
Math.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you leave college, you like numbers.
Love them.
Okay. So then you say, how can I make money? and you land in the financial area, or
No, when I came out of school, what sold me on technology was one question, because there was no computer science programs at that point, because I came out in 1969.
I was just going to ask what year. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was
Yeah.
nothing.
Right.
Yeah. So I went to work for a Singer sewing machine, and they were looking for computer programmer trainees. And in the interview, they said, do you like, you're a math person. Do you like solving puzzles? And I said, yes. I said, well, you'll probably be good at this, because it's not the math per se, it's the logic. It's the logic of solving equations, puzzles. It's the same side of the brain.
Why in the world would Singer sewing machine need you?
Payroll. They had payroll systems. They had all of the stores.
Gotcha. I'm trying to think in my mind sewing
Right.
machines and math.
Right
so-
now, they had
Okay.
stores at that time, Singer sewing machine stores all over the country.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so we handled the payroll and any of the operational issues of the stores. And
Gotcha.
it was handled out of this area up in Long Island.
Was there anything that happened at that job that helped kind of thrust you to your next job, or did you just?
Yes. A couple of things. It was very interesting. The gentleman I was working for was a good man, nice person.
Well, your
But, you
voice
know.
went up a little bit. Yeah.
But he approached me after I was there like a few months or so. He said, you're going to always want to be careful, because you've got 2 strikes against you. First, you're a woman. Second, you're black.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So he said
Okay.
those words.
And,
So
I mean, let me ask you. I mean, can we dig into that for a second?
absolutely.
So, I'm in my early to mid 40s. Okay, it's 2024. We're not going to pretend that there's not all sorts of craziness out there in the world. However, for all of the trials and tribulations, and for all of the mess that I grew up with, I didn't know racism. I never saw it. It's not that it didn't happen. It's just that I literally never saw it. For people like this guy, did he just think that this is an appropriate thing to say, and that he was just kind of like almost helping you out? Or was it like being a dick?
Yeah. That.
Yeah.
Because he was. There's a lot, it was interesting. He had an interesting personality. And so when
imagine.
we had lunch in the lunchroom, and this was just, the programmers and stuff, we would push the chairs away, if any extra chairs, just so he couldn't join us. Because he knew everything about everything,
Wow.
and he was an annoying person. Fast forward, he's the reason I got a job at Solomon Brothers.
Why? How?
So I'm working at Singer, and he approaches me this way, and I'm new in the world, I mean,
Yeah.
we still call people Mr. So-and-so and
Yeah.
stuff, So I didn't try to say anything to him at that time. I
no.
just, no.
That would have been
it's like,
3
fine.
strikes.
Yes, that's right. So I didn't
Yeah.
say anything. And
Wow.
it was like a couple of months later, and I had started to learn more about my field, and that the way you really increased financially and everything in that field was to switch jobs. That's what technology people do. So I found a job with a consulting firm, and I decided to join them, and that was in the city. And so this is like really cool, and getting my first apartment and everything. So I resigned. Now, I met some people there, really great friends for life. And a couple of them had gone to work for Solomon Brothers. I knew nothing about Wall Street. Zippo.
Perfect. Let's go work in Wall Street.
Yeah, so they went to Solomon Brothers, and they called me and said, Barrie, you got to get a job here. You got to work here. This place is amazing. So I get an interview, and at that time it was still personal. You didn't do the
Zoom
and
yeah.
put your thing up on
LinkedIn
Indeed and
and-
all of that.
yeah,
No, you
all-
went to see the person.
Yeah.
So I went to see the guy, and I was talking to him, and he says, yeah, your resume looks good. You sound good, but we don't have any openings right now. And so meanwhile, behind him on the wall is the org chart for the organization. I see this name up there. And I asked him, is that so-and-so? And he says, yes. He said, well, I used to work for him, singer. It was the same guy. He was
my
now working
goodness.
as all of us. So Andy, the gentleman I interviewed with, Andy said, well, let me see. So Andy calls me like a few days later, and he says, I talked to Stan, and he said he would love to have you working for him again. And they opened up a spot for me.
So I guess I'm having a hard time understanding. The guy who tells you to
Yes.
watch your back, it's
Yes.
2 strikes,
Yes.
is also your biggest fan and gets you a job.
Yes, this is later in life. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, because I was good at what I did.
Well, that
And
helps. Yeah.
And he was,
Obviously, that guy grew up in a household and just was probably surrounded with all the rampant racism and all the nonsense, right? I mean,
it's not that it's everywhere.
yeah.
It's everywhere. It's not in any one person's household. It's a part of the fabric.
Yeah.
When I looked for my first apartment, they showed me places that were ridiculous on Long Island. Ridiculous. I'm not going to live there. Why would you take me there? What makes you think that's where I want to live? I've had people tell me, oh, I could show you a place, but black people live there.
I don't.
Yeah.
They said that to you?
Yes.
Did you say?
No, this is a life you learn how to walk through.
Yeah.
I would think that 99% of Black Americans can tell you stories. It's just the walk we live. It's the world we live in.
I've had this theory for a long time. It's more of a hypothesis, but I never really thought that racism was that big of an issue. I thought it was more of a classism. So, for example, and I don't know if this is true or not. In law enforcement, for example, I think that there's no denying that profiling is very real. However, do you think that if a guy, white, black, Indian, Asian, whatever, is driving wearing a shirt, tie, suit versus torn shirt, all the things that maybe baggies or whatever, how much of that comes into play? Or do you think that just amplifies an issue that's already always there?
You mean if you're saying if they're dressed a particular way,
right? No matter what. Because clearly
I know people who are professionals who are treated like, I know of someone who was a doctor living in a exclusive neighborhood, came home in his wonderful car, and the police stopped him because they want to know, why are you here? It was a big deal. It was actually a big deal because he wasn't able to produce identification right away. His wife was at home. It was a big mess. So it's more pervasive. I mean, it's more pervasive than people realize. And it's interesting because it's not just always whites and their thoughts of blacks, but sometimes that same thought process comes from us as well. Yeah, but we'll be afraid in a situation where there's more black people.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So first off, let's go back to the fact, I'm well aware of the fact I mentioned to you before, I didn't grow up in an area. I grew up in Monmouth County, New Jersey. It's, I don't know, the most boring place known to man. It's great. It was a great place. It wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't a thing. I'm sure it was. I was blind to it if it was a thing.
Yeah.
So that's a testament to my dad and my upbringing. Thankfully, my friends, like we weren't aware of it. If somebody came into our group and they didn't look just like us, we didn't care.
Right.
It was whatever. But to your point, knowing professionals and they're still getting treated as if they're less than for some reason.
Yeah. I can name several stories.
And by the way, we could probably go on for multiple episodes on this. And I don't want to lose fact. I had to go on that sidebar because I found it interesting that this guy who had, for lack of a better term, just the balls to tell you such a ridiculous thing,
Yeah.
but then also vouch for you. I find that just interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so now you're working at Solomon Brothers.
Right. And it was interesting after I joined and I was there for a while, I got to know people. They asked me, why, if you worked for this guy before, why in the world would you want to work for him again?
Because now he made a new group of people who didn't like him.
He was still him.
How would you answer that?
I just laugh. I said, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know.
Amen.
That's right.
And that
so
is
I
true.
already knew how to deal with him.
Good answer.
Yep.
Good answer. Yeah. So now, how long did it take you to develop roots there and to make a name for yourself? And what did you actually do there?
How long? Well, I started there in 73, 74-ish, January 74, I would say. It was December 31st, 73, I think. And I always seem to get put on these little projects that they had something special to do. Like, we need a new way to do this department over here. And I went out and I found a new type of little machine that they could use. And then I had to figure out how to program that. I was always like a problem solver.
Interesting.
You know, people would give me stuff to do. And then somewhere in that, but what really kind of launched me was when there was a department that wanted to have our computers talk to the Fed's computers and the clearing bank's computers.
Okay.
Yes. And when I heard about that project, I was reading books at that time about how systems, the way they were being designed, were flawed. The whole way people were setting things up, it was very flawed.
What exactly was the issue? And then what was it that you were looking to fix?
Okay. Now, so this was bills, bonds, notes.
Okay.
That people were trading, not individuals. These are all institutional trades.
Gotcha.
So our traders are trading these all day, but these things clear overnight cash. It's not, they don't have 2 or 3 days. That night they have to clear. So you're moving trades around, you're moving inventory of what you just sold over to someone else. They've got to acknowledge it. All of this is people on the phone, back office on the phone, fax machines. Back then, not a lot of technology supporting that.
Sure.
So the department, the clearing department for that used big blotter sheets, gigantic blotter sheets for all of these bills, bonds, and notes.
Wow.
And they would track the trades to find out what their balance was, what their position was on all of these securities. This was huge.
Yeah, I mean, what a task.
What a task. And the money had to move. Everything had to move by 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 3:30. There are different cutoffs. And it had to be done. And so the instructions for that money moving had to be wherever they were going, and it had to be accepted.
Okay.
So it's a big deal. Lots of phones.
Yes.
Lots of stress.
Yes.
Every day.
Every day.
If you missed any of the deadlines, then the Fed would keep it open. They'd have to extend the deadline. And that was never a place the firm wanted to be in. You didn't want to be the reason it got held up.
Sure.
So that's what they were dealing with. That department, they would work 10, 11 o'clock at night, proving everything. They had to get it down and proof. Because now what happens overnight is all of those positions are used by the firm to borrow money.
To set the next day.
To borrow money to cover all of their positions in the firm.
Gotcha.
So they put it out on loans. So that's another piece of it. So now they have the trades. They know what they have in position.
Yep.
Now they got to do loans. And they're on the banks doing the loans. We're doing this. We're doing that. And then they know what they have. So it's a really, really intense.
Okay.
Yeah, really intense. The cage. That's what I was trying to think of. The cage. That's the cage.
So you're now here at the advent of technology.
Yes. So now They had a vision, the gentleman that ran it. He said, suppose when we put the trades into the system, because trades are going in, when we put them in, wouldn't it be great if we could send a message to the clearing banks computers, and they would let us know they got the message, so now they have it instead of them having to call them and fax and all that other stuff they were doing. If we could just get our computer to send it to them.
Okay.
And then their computer then also now get them to be able to send it to the Fed.
Okay.
And then we know in real time what our position is. I'm there and I hear about this concept, and I know that everybody wasn't really thinking this through. And I'm reading books about the way systems are being designed, and I see us still designing systems in this bad way. And I know nobody's thinking forward. We've got to change how we do stuff. So I read the book, and I said, this is perfect project for this, because it was 2 clearing banks. It was Bank of New York and Chase, but at the time it was Irving Trust.
Okay.
And Manny Hanny. And now Bank of New York is the only bank that does this. They're still in that business. They're the only one.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they're the clearing banks that all of the investment banking firms now go through Bank of New York, and then they send it out to the Fed. So now I've read a book on how systems should be designed differently. And I knew that this project was going to mean we need to put this plug in. Next, we need to put this plug in, and then we need to put this plug in. You don't want someone that's going to think about how to do all of this at once. Right. You have to build a framework that allows you to plug components in.
Okay.
And that was novel then. That wasn't how, now that's more the thought process. So I get the guy who wrote the book to come in. I said, well, you come in and speak to our senior folks. So I get it, I put it all together. Then he came in, great presentation. They said, this is great, go do it.
Unbelievable.
And that was it. Because that down there, it was, especially during that time, I don't know that corporations move that fast anymore, but down there at that time, you had an idea and they could see, yeah, well, we can afford that, no big deal. And they're going there out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, just do it. And that's how I got that project.
How long did the project take to, I want to say complete, but complete might not be the right word, but how long did it take to get it up and running to where everybody was happy?
We hit the final piece around 1981. It was about 5 years.
Wow.
So the first year was to replace the core framework. We had to put in just a basic framework that everything else was going to plug into.
Okay.
So they weren't going to see, all of the bells and whistles until we took what they were doing and got that into a system.
Cohesive.
Cohesive system. And then we had to plug each bank in, because each bank had their own technology way they would do stuff.
Okay.
They were on different platforms.
Right.
So they had to do their own job, and they were in competition with each other. They each wanted to be the first.
Yeah.
And then at the end, now we have a fully real-time system where we know where our positions are. So that's when we built a terminal that they could actually see it in color. Color terminal. There was no such thing.
In the early 80s?
Early 80s.
Yeah, sure.
We rolled out that first. The IBM rolled out a color terminal with 4 colors.
Wow.
And we jumped on it, and we built our position. So that was out about 1980, 81.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Do you think that you got the recognition that you should have gotten and that the team should have gotten? Did you feel it? Yeah.
Yeah, we got it. We did, because they were laughing at us because we were doing something new. We were drawing little bubbles. It was a whole new way of doing stuff. I was talking to a very close friend of mine just the other day. She worked for me during that time. We've been friends ever since then.
Wow.
And she was telling me how people had come to her and was telling her, she worked for me. She said, Barrie, they told me this was going to fail and that she should look for another job.
Really?
Because we're going to fail.
This will never work.
This is never going to work. And people were laughing because we're just drawing bubbles and doing stuff. And meanwhile, anybody else that would have taken it on would have been coding and writing programs.
Yeah, sure.
And it would have been the same mess.
Yeah.
That's right.
Just a revamp.
A revamp, and it wouldn't have been what we were doing.
So did that system lead the charge or the way that things are still done today, or is it just wildly different now?
It's wildly different now. That tends to look more about like what we were doing.
Right.
It's wildly different because now they do develop things in little buckets of functions, modular. And back then it wasn't modular. It was very different.
The computers then. Tell me what a computer looked like in 1980 that you were using.
Big. Well, they were mainframes. I'm trying to think when we got a desktop in around 82.
Are we talking like Apple IICs and Commodores and stuff?
We had hardwired terminals. There was no PCs. Those didn't roll out until about 82, 83.
Right.
Before PCs, and then you had those on your desks.
Otherwise, you just had these giant mainframes.
And you were hooked into that, and everything moved very slow. So you write something now, you program it now, you send it over to the computer, and a few days later, you get the result with how if it was good or if you had to fix stuff. So things were very different. If you wanted to send a memo out to people, you had someone type your memo and make copies and put it on everybody's desk. People think that email did not exist.
Yeah, that's right.
It did not exist back then.
I remember when email, first off, let me rephrase that. I don't remember when email came out, but I vaguely remember, AOL and those kind of things. And there were people out there who were like, this is never going to take off. Email. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just like you were saying, there was people within your own company laughing.
Yeah.
Kind of saying like, this is ridiculous. This chick's going to get fired.
Yeah, we're going to get fired. So no, when it first started, when the project first started and I walked into the room with these guys from the cage, they walked out. They were like, nah.
Really?
Yeah, they were not interested in seeing me. Yeah. They did not. They may have thought that Barrie was a guy. I don't know what they thought.
Oh, that could be.
They weren't looking for a black woman with an afro. It's in my early 30s, 20s, 30s.
Were you working the afro? Was it legit?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was legit.
Yeah. Do you think, let me rephrase that. When you were in that position, how were you able to focus on not only a job, but such a high level, innovative job with that underlying having to be a scanner and kind of looking over your shoulder? You probably could have even performed better.
Yeah. And I think I get some of that from my mom, probably just like tunnel vision. I knew that I was better than anybody else that was sitting around to do that project. I knew that all the guys, they were thinking they were going to get that project. I knew I would do a better job than them. I just knew it.
So again, it comes down to, it was a decision. You just made a decision. Yeah. It's not that easy to, I'm simplifying it by just being like, well, good, you did it. But it is very unfair, though, from the outside looking in, to be put in a position to have the, the brain power and the want to do this pretty new task, getting laughed at the whole way and kind of feeling also threatened and out of place. Yeah. This is not cool.
It's not cool. But, and I'll tell you something, and I've had this conversation with friends. As a black woman, I could do things that a black man could not do because I could get in their face. I could get in someone's face at Salmon Brothers.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I could cuss them out if I needed to, because we did a lot of cussing back in those days. Oh, bad. Wall Street was bad. It was bad.
Shocker. Yeah, I guess that's
It
not.
was bad.
But
But
yours-
I had fun with people. I talk to people now, and they laugh. They said they could hear my voice raising sometimes, and they would say, "Oh God, she's
what
mad as
happened
a-"
if a black male did that? They would get thrown out. I mean,
Yeah,
really?
that's a man-to-man thing.
Mm.
That's a man-to-man thing, and I think that black men in general have had to dial down to not lose their jobs.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going way back. They've had to protect their families. They have to protect their jobs. They have to take a lot of crap.
I'm sure that there were people that were very intimidated by you, which is fine.
Which was fine.
So be it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I worked for Mike Bloomberg for a year.
Really?
Yeah, very interesting. He ran technology for a year.
So, and we're talking Bloomberg.
Bloomberg. This is before he was Bloomberg.
What did you do?
I was running that project.
I see.
I was running that project, and one of the reasons I wasn't getting the support that I did finally get from the department I was doing it for was Mike Bloomberg was in competition for running all of back office operations with another gentleman who was running. So Mike had technology. This other gentleman had back office operations. They were both vying to take over the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So they wouldn't even meet on each other's floors. They would meet on neutral floors.
An away game every time.
It was a game.
Wow.
It was a big game. So the back office people I was supporting with that new project was back in office supporting me because they wanted him to fail.
Oh, gotcha.
See?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it was a lot of politics and nonsense going on. But I was saying that to say Mike Bloomberg was, I would say, a womanizer would be just a polite way to say it. So he was always making comments about the women or to the women or whatever. So we had a presentation because we're getting ready to roll everything out now. And we're rolling out the position system in 81, and we have the color terminals and everything. So we're doing a demonstration, and he was going to be there and some other senior guys. And so the system was crashing. If you did the wrong thing, it was still crashing. So we had the presentation set, and we're going to do this demo. And I told my team, I said, listen, don't worry. They're not going to know what happened. I said, if I hit something and we see it crash, we know what happened. Don't react, and I'll run right past that. And I told the women, and I said, women, wear your skirts and the suits that has the slits, on them. Because the guys won't know.
The
guys don't know. Yeah, they'll be looking at you ladies.
Distracted.
Yeah, they'll be distracted.
Simple creatures. That's amazing. Unfortunately, not much has probably changed in that world, right? Yeah. So how long after that whole, the Bloomberg thing, did you stay in that industry? Or to this day, you're still in
Well, now I'm in a different part of it.
Yeah.
But so that was what that led to in terms of the recognition part was I was able to I worked with this small team, and we were just solving problems. We were looking for problems and solving them. And that's when I developed that terminal that looks like an iPad, the touchscreen terminal.
What do you mean?
We had a problem on a trading floor, and these guys were responsible for putting trades out at the very last few minutes of the day that was also going to support the cheapest way of funding their positions.
Okay.
And that was cheaper than the stuff that went out on loans overnight. This was the cheap way. And so there was always a lot of repo trades that are done at the end of the day. They're trying to get the best rate, last second, because they know what their positions are. So we were trying to solve his problem because now at that time, he had to write a trade ticket up. Somebody had to get that trade ticket in. They had to go through all of those manual steps. And he wanted some way that he could just get it into the system.
How long did that process take?
Which part?
About like getting your ticket, writing it down, having somebody run on the floor.
Maybe like 10 minutes,
Wow. That's an
10,
eternity.
15 minutes. It's an eternity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were looking for something that would give them, like, they got now, because of the work we've done, they have real-time system sitting there. They know what they've got. They don't have to call someone to ask them, what do you have? They
right
actually
there.
can see it on the terminal, but now they need to now get it into the system right away. So that's just, when I was talking and looking, we were looking at voice-activated technology, and it says, no, can't use voice because these guys are already screaming in 2 phones.
Yep.
That won't work. And then we were looking at some other touch screen things that were out there, and then AT&T was developing a touchscreen terminal, and they were looking for someone to work with for a commercial application. And so we said, we'll do it. And so we got the funding for that. They said, yeah, do it. And we built a terminal that looks like an iPad
What
in
year
1985.
Really?
Yeah.
Is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So this device now enabled the trader to...
Yep. Now he could actually enter his own trade with a touch screen. It wasn't wireless because there was no wireless.
There was no wireless. There was no Bluetooth.
It was a hardwired terminal that he could touch. And AT&T had a commercial out during that time period. It was maybe a 10, 15-second spot where they showed a nurse standing in a hospital room with a black terminal, and saying, this is the way of the future. And she was like touching it.
You're kidding me.
No. And this was in 85, 86. And now what do they do today?
That
They
is...
stand in the hospital bed with a touchscreen terminal.
Let me ask you, I'm blown away by this. During that time, did you realize the discoveries that it just all seemed normal to you?
Yeah, it was fun, and you didn't realize the greater impact that was there. The system that we built also that moved everything with the clearance, the computer to computer now, there was someone on the street that said they were going to create a firm that was going to do that for the street.
Yeah.
And so he developed all of the technology. He did not the technology. He had all of his analysis done, and he put together their plans and all of that. And now he of course wanted it supported by the street. So he bring it to Solomon Brothers because we had done it. And so they brought it to Solomon, and he wanted them to review it. He said, I need you guys to review this to see. And he said, you have to give that to Barrie. Go find her. She's the one that needs to review this. And I reviewed his specs on what they were building.
Amazing. How were you treated at this point now? Obviously with open arms?
Oh, yes. The department I did it for, the guys that walked out of the room on me, we were like this.
Yeah.
We were good buds after that first year when I delivered that very first piece.
You were in.
I was in. And they were my biggest fans after that. I was really supported by them.
That's remarkable. How long did you stay in this city? You were living in the city at this point, or in New Jersey and traveling?
Where was I living? I had moved over to Staten Island at that point because it was a ferry ride over to, I was working right there in One New York Plaza. So you get off the ferry, walk right across the street.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then I did eventually move out to Westchester. I moved up to Westchester, and I went in on subways and stuff.
Right, did the whole commute. So I'm going to dissect the two kind of profound moments of your life.
Yes.
This ultra high, you're developing the future, and then the lowest of the low where you're having to break down your kitchen. Where did things spin out?
Okay, so let me go back. Let's step back for a second. So I'm in Wall Street, and then I have the panic attacks. So that steps me back from technology. That stepped me back from technology when I was trying to literally find myself, and that's when I came to know the Lord.
Because it was that intense. It literally was. It was controlling your day.
I'm telling you, sitting in this chair and you pushing me in, the thought that runs through my mind is, am I going to feel claustrophobic?
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a lingering thing,
Sure.
but I always I tell my mind, shut up. Those days are over.
You're safe. You're comfortable now.
I'm fine. But it's it was severe. I had severe claustrophobia. I couldn't get it. If a back seat of a car did not have a door, I couldn't sit in there.
The psychology behind that is what I'm dying to get to. And you might know the exact moment. I mean, maybe you don't. Clearly, the claustrophobia and the panic onsets, that's some childhood stuff right there.
I was holding on to things that are temporary.
Yeah, wasn't serving you.
No, my life was built around people that, people, you can't hold on to people and get everything out of people. They don't have the answers.
You were thriving so well, even against, it's almost like you perform well when you're being pressured or when you have to almost be in survival mode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Which is unfortunate. You have to be that way.
Yeah. Well, I did. And I think a lot of people work well under pressure. Sometimes, especially, for sure. In that environment.
Some people crumble and turn into the fetal position.
Yeah.
But,
and a lot of the opportunities that I had, because that was just the Solomon side, because then I came out of technology and I sold clothes out of my living room.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And I did a whole nother business thing. Then I came to know the Lord. Then I came back into technology. I came back into technology working for a small firm, and many of the people were from Solomon Brothers. And they called me up, and they said, Barrie, do you want to come back to work? Because your name came up in a meeting today that you would be a great person for what we need to get done here.
How long was the gap that you were out of there?
About 2.5 years. 2.5 years.
Did it feel like an eternity, or did you hit the ground running and you never missed a beat?
I kind of hit the ground running but I kind of was, the part that wasn't running was the claustrophobic part.
Okay. That was still a thing.
It was leaving though.
Okay.
But I was conscious of it. But the job that I was blessed with was on the 3rd floor in a little building in the Wall Street area off on a side road. And the company had maybe 100 employees. So the level of stress that I was dealing with was greatly reduced.
Right.
And and at this point also, I have a relation. I have my Bible. I have my scriptures. I know that there's a Lord. I know that there's a God that's going to walk me through this. And so that was huge when I came back.
So what do you do now? How would you sum up what it is that you do now professionally? And then how does that, what your profession is now, how does that bleed into your personal life? Or does it not?
How does that bleed into your personal life? Well, what I do now, the similarity there is problem solving.
Okay. But other people's problems?
Yes.
Right.
And it's funny because my career, when I look at all of the different things I did after Solomon Brothers, what continued on was problem solving. Where I worked for Reuters for 6-7 years.
What's that?
Reuters is a news, they're like Associated Press.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you'll see Reuters.
Yes,
yeah,
gotcha.
Reuters.
Yep.
Yes.
It's all coming back to me.
Right. So Reuters is, they also had a Bloomberg type of product that they sold to the street. So that was on their other side of their business lines. Okay. So I worked for them for a number of years as a project manager there. And it was always the case was, oh, Barrie, put down what you're doing right now, please, and go over there because we need you over there.
The fixer.
The fixer. They don't know. We don't know what's going on. Just go over there and find out what's going on. And I had this way of being able to just kind of find out what was
Help out.
going on, help out,
Would
or
you
find out what was going on.
Would you consider yourself an advisor now?
Now, I'm a problem solver still. That's still what I like to do, is to see where people are, where they want to be, and how I can help them get from A to B. But I do that, and I do that professionally, but I just do that. That's sort of,
You do it anyway.
I do it anyway. And people call me like Dick Tracy sometimes, because I can get into a situation. And my strength, if I look back over everything, my strength has always been in not what I know, it's in what I don't know.
It's huge. It's not that you're so confident in the thing you know,
Yeah.
it's the hunt for a better mousetrap.
It's, yes. And when I don't know something, if I don't know a topic, or I don't know that industry, or I don't know that field, that's when I'm really good. Because a lot of times people know stuff. And as soon as you know too much, you assume too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So that's why I've always been good at getting thrown into situations where I didn't know stuff, because I'm going to ask so many questions until I find out. And when I can understand it, that's when I can help other people see where the issues are.
So do you do this privately now? Are you working for a big corporation? Are you looking to wind down?
I'm kind of, I'll probably always do this, and I'm with New York Life.
Okay.
So on the New York Life side, I work with folks in terms of their insurance or financial needs, seeing if they are structured the best way they can be, and if there are other people that I can even connect them with, depending on what it is they might need.
Do you mentor anybody?
I've done that before in the past, and I did some mentoring this last couple of years, but that was on a different scale. It was middle school students, and then you're really just...
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, and it wasn't with the math or anything like that. It was just really being there for kids and making sure they understand that people care about them and things like that. So I might get involved with some financial literacy initiatives that are going on now for folks. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the education or the lack of education about money, checkbooks?
It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's obviously a mega problem.
Mega miss.
Do you think that, without getting too deep into conspiracy, do you think that that's intentional, or is it just a blind, ridiculous misfire?
That's a good question. Do I think it's intentional?
To keep people
just in the blind.
Sick and
But
poor
everybody, everybody needs to know how to balance a checkbook, or how to write a check, or something. But we don't learn anything about how to manage our lives. How do you run your own life as a business?
Yeah.
Even,
public education, private education, probably even in college, university, that just seems to be an afterthought.
It's an afterthought. But the people that make a lot of money are usually making it because someone else doesn't realize that they're, like, take credit cards. That's like a big deal.
Yeah.
The credit card world.
Explain what you mean.
That world started in 1960, 1950 or so. Before then, people didn't use credit cards to buy stuff. They paid for it. If they didn't have the money, they had to wait till they had the money. And then they bought it. And so the banks came along, and they saw there was an opportunity there. And now the banks make a lot of money on selling people on the need for credit.
So let's say the credit card was a means to get people to buy a bunch of stuff they can't initially afford.
Right.
And then justify paying it off the way that we just all think is very, very common now.
It's so common.
Yeah. a car loan, for example,
Yeah.
you could argue that makes sense. You
Yeah.
know, in one capacity or the other,
Yeah.
a mortgage.
Same thing. Beyond that,
But a Peloton,
yeah.
you know, or the $495 mirror in your room, or the nonsense that, you know, is, you know, I mean, capitalism obviously thrusted that forward. Credit cards are a mega problem.
It's $2 trillion in credit card debt that's out there now on Americans. Trillions of dollars on credit card debt.
Which is a
Not
number,
talking mortgages, we're talking credit card debt.
which is a number that we can think we know. We can't actually imagine
No.
with that's a number that's so astronomically big. Like we know what that means, but we can't. We can't
don't really
articulate
know.
that.
No,
Yeah.
no.
So, what's the answer? I mean, what really is the answer? Is it educating people younger? Is it
Younger.
kind of
It's a mindset. And I just had this conversation with some people. It's a mindset that we have all been sold into about making more money,
needing more
versus
stuff?
needing more stuff versus having money. You know, we're chasing the wrong things. Okay, student loans.
Yeah.
Ah,
What are your thoughts on student loans? I can't wait.
Peeve. So when I went to college, I had never even heard of student loans until I was in my 30s or 40s or something. And I didn't even know what that was. When I went to school, my brother went to school, my mother paid for our education. There was no such thing as student loans, right?
Right. Didn't exist.
Didn't exist. So now here's what happens. I'm going to allow you to borrow $100,000 to go to school. Right now, your college costs $5,000.
Right.
But I see an opportunity. I'm going to lend you $100,000 to go to school. So now your school is going to decide, hey, you know, this guy could buy $100,000. He can borrow $100,000. Let's charge him $150 to go to school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which came first?
Chicken or the egg?
The chicken
kinda.
or the egg?
Yeah.
Did our educational system increase its value to the tune of $250,000?
Not a chance.
Not a chance.
Not even
Not a
close.
chance.
No.
But if you can borrow $250,000 to go to school, I can charge you $250,000 to go to school. Why not? Why
not?
wouldn't I?
And it looks like found money because this loan just appears.
The loan appears.
Yeah.
And you pay for it for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And there's interest and all this other stuff. And there's a lot of money circling around with this stuff. But the value of what we're getting now is not much different. It's very distorted.
Right.
Take the housing market. Until the early 60s, there was only one income allowed on a mortgage to qualify.
So you're saying a married couple?
Right. Only one.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And not the woman.
Stop it.
Yep. Women were not allowed. We weren't. If there was a couple, the woman's name could not be on it.
Couldn't or ought to know?
No. It's 1968, there was an act put in place that gave women the right.
What?
Yes.
I never knew that.
Yes.
That was not that long ago.
Not that long ago. You have to look it up, exactly what that allowed women to do. But it's in that field of borrowing money.
Wow.
Yep.
Never would have known that.
Now the banks say, oh, you know what? Let's let two parties apply for a mortgage.
Double the income.
And that's it. Now, what do you think that did to the housing prices?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really interesting what is real value. It's a perceived number.
So I just want to make sure I have this right. It sounds like what you're saying is education, let's just say, could cost 10 grand, but now student loans give you 100 grand, which means they've opened up the education and be like, well, might as well charge them 100 if they're going to get 100.
That's right.
Mortgages, a house that was 100,000 was because it was on one income. But now if you double that income, well, might as well double the price of the house.
That's it. That helped
Yeah.
raise that. In the housing market, that did it for sure. That started to elevate the prices of the homes.
What are your thoughts being, a financial and a computer wizard that you are? Have you ever heard of the idea that the middle class it's kind of a sham that it was developed really after World War II, I think, because now you had all of these GIs coming home, the man's man kind of thing where they could provide for their family, and they were getting some government assistance, and there was then a job boom that was created. So it was either the haves or the have-nots, but now you had the people that were in this middle bracket, which I understand wasn't really a thing until the 50s or 60s at most. I'm under the impression that the gap is widening and that the middle class is kind of in trouble.
In trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find any validity to that?
Yeah. The middle class is in, I think. And once again, I always go back to the mindset of people. Our mindsets have really changed over the years in terms of working hard to make more money, or are we working hard to have more money? We're working hard to make more money and spend more money, not to have more money. And we're constantly being sold the need to have more.
Oh, sure. I mean, let's just even talk about reframing things. I mean, you can't watch a commercial without, are you suffering from allergies? Like, first off, suffering is a choice.
Yeah.
Is sneezing every once in a while that bad? And I think that what happens is, I'm using that as an example.
Yeah.
You can, the face creams and the stuff.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with looking good, feeling good. I get it. But I bet you if people had to carry a 5-gallon bucket of water to have water for their house that day, and they had to carry it 1.5 miles, they would be so busy they wouldn't be worried about the nonsense that they're worried about now. Yeah,
it's a lot.
And I feel for younger people, especially that are born in the middle class, because I got to tell you, it feels like a trap door that's just going to open up because social media, which you don't have to be on, but phones now for younger people, it's not like it is even for us, where if I leave for the day, or I'm out in my yard, I'm in a pool, I don't have to have my phone. It's all good. But you have to empathize with the kids. That's what they know. So taking a phone away now is almost like the equivalent of...
That's bad.
I mean, it's probably damn right, I don't know,
Cruel.
Traumatizing. Yeah. So, I get it. I mean, I do. I get it. But how is this going to move forward for younger people? That's why I ask you about mentoring, because I know that you've been able to overcome and adapt, not only for yourself, but come up with these incredible systems. I think you have some gas left in the tank to help people.
Yeah.
I do. I actually do. Yeah. I think your problem solving, I'm not, assuming that you're going to go change the way that the economy is set up, but I guarantee you the service that you can provide to some people is just waiting to pop.
That's interesting you should say that, because that's really so on my mind these days. I had a long conversation with someone, was chewing their ear off about this, because it's the mindset. It's our mindsets. We have to really step back for a second and understand what's really driving everything we're doing. And are we in control of this? We've got to get control of the direction that we're being drawn into, because it is and it's going to get worse in terms of people coming along now. How are they going to retire?
It's an interesting question. I was just going to ask you, without harping too much on the financials, but it's important. The biggest mistake you're seeing people in their 30s and 40s make right now, what would you identify that as? Is it retirement planning and not even thinking about?
Not really thinking about it, And some of the tools that they're being given, like the 401k, is not necessarily a strong way to go, because they're going to be paying taxes on that money later on, and people aren't really understanding. They're not, and I don't know what's going to happen with Social Security. That's just also very interesting.
Yeah, it's scary.
So the baby boomers are this big bunch of people, and we impact every stage of life. So you have baby boomers now impacting the retirement world. Now people are thinking that I paid into Social Security, so I should get my money. No, we don't get the money today that we put in. Our money went to the people years ago
Right.
who needed it. We're getting money from the people that are working now.
Right.
That working population is going down
Oh, yeah. Quickly.
quickly. It's
Right.
going down quickly.
Don't be
So-
fooled by that's a big difference between unemployment and overall workforce. 'Cause
Workforce.
right.
Yeah,
Unemployment's
workforce.
like, what are you talking about? Unemployment's low.
Workforce is
Doesn't
shrinking.
matter. Exactly.
Workforce is going down. It's not like the baby boomers were funding someone else's retirement.
Yeah.
So who's going to fund theirs? Also, the whole notion of pensions and things like that. I mean, the people that I know that are the happiest are the ones that have a pension. They have a regular check.
Yeah.
And so you have young people that are looking at the older people, assuming there's something like that out there for them in their future.
Yeah, which makes sense. But I got to tell you, I think in 40 years, 50 years, the word pension is going to be like,
What is that?
How much money would you say a couple, 2 kids, although you would argue by the time they're adults, they're probably on their own. What kind of money should they have saved?
At what point? For
Right.
their retirement or?
I'm sorry. Yeah. For people in their 30s or 40s, thinking that they don't want to work till they're 80, that they want to work till they're, 65, 67, 70, whatever it is. Do you think that it's fair to think that people in their 30s can say, hey, if I just have a couple $100,000, I'm good to go? Or
Not then. If they have it now and let it grow.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting
Yeah,
at, where if you're on the wrong side of interest, you're screwed,
Yeah.
right? But if you're on the right side and you make money work for
Yes.
you, which is what you help people do,
Yeah.
what's a fair percentage of someone's pay that they should sock away?
A fair percentage, if they're doing it early enough, I would say 10%.
10% of their pay, their gross or net?
I'm thinking net.
Net. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're
But right away, because that's when it comes down to this whole notion of mindset. You know, the banks will tell you you can get a mortgage for this amount because you're making this.
right.
But don't do that.
Right.
Don't do what the bank says you can afford to do. You really have to look and decide on a long-term basis, how much am I paying myself?
Yeah, I mean, I'll
know.
tell you the truth. I mean, I fell into the trap in 2000, maybe 4 or 5. Okay, I'm working. At the time, I was making about $45,000 at 22, 23 years old, which wasn't terrible. Made my very first phone call to a bank. No background check, nothing. Just told them, and they were like, "Oh, you're good. You're pre-qualified for a $500,000 house." I'm not kidding you. And I thought to myself at the time, that sounds like a lot of money. And keep in mind, a $500,000 house, 19 to 22
Wow.
years ago was
Wow.
a big deal.
That's a big deal.
And I remember saying, talking to my wife and being like, hey, we were looking at houses in, the 275 to 310, but the bank's saying we can do 500. And both of us were like, kind of smiling.
Yeah.
Where we're like, hey, maybe we miscalculated.
Yeah.
Why would the people who play with money and do all this steer us wrong?
Right.
So we upped our budget and we started looking into 410, 430. We had zero business looking at that. We really did. Combined, we were making about $75,000.
Yeah.
We had car payments, no
Yes.
huge credit card debt, but we did it.
Yeah.
And then you look at it, 67, 71% of our pay was mortgage.
Yeah.
This is not okay.
No,
I think that's common now.
that's common. No, you're right.
That's brutal.
It's brutal. And that's why I talk about like the mindset of people has to change,
Yeah.
because the mindset that we are being given is not working for people.
Buy more stuff.
It's buy more stuff. Credit. Credit Karma's job is to get you to believe you can get more credit. They want you to sign up for this bank, sign up for that. the banks are making gobs of money on that, and people are drowning in all of it. And it's really, it's about that mindset, but it has to start very early.
Yeah.
Like when I hear people say, well, I'm teaching my kid the importance of credit. Make sure you have good credit. Get your first credit card so you have good credit. No, that's not the mindset.
It's
If you do the right things, you'll have good credit. Who cares? Teach them how to create assets, not liabilities.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, grow wealth, not the need for somebody else's wealth.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, the Bible says be a lender, not a borrower. The
Brilliant.
Bible says that.
Yes.
He knew something.
He knew back then.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Incredible. You know, we're at the point of the show where I do this all the time. I have this list of questions. I usually get through 2 or 3, but then the conversation is fluid, which is wonderful. And I could probably do this with you for hours and hours, but I'm going to start winding it down. And the way that I do that is I really like opening this. And in this book is just some really, really interesting things that I've handwritten down. It's my approach to doing this, every episode. And I don't look, I just have all of this and I just scroll. And then the thing that I land on, I really would like your input on. So here we go. Is there a mystery or riddle you'd want to solve, even if it took a lifetime to answer? You're the solver and the mystery and the puzzle lady. Can you believe what a great question that was?
That's a great question. So is there a mystery
Yep.
or a puzzle?
Yep. That you just have to solve, even if it takes your life, your whole life to do? It's a big question.
That's a big question. A lot of, if not just everything that I have or can become has a lot to do with my mother.
Okay.
My mother was really special.
Interesting.
Yeah, my mother was special. Born 1910. By the time she was 30 years old, she owned a restaurant. She owned a restaurant for 30 years.
Wow. From 1940 to 1970?
Yep.
Okay.
Put my brother through NYU.
Wow.
He's a super scientist guy now. He's a super scientist.
I might have to meet him.
Yeah. And put me through college. And she worked. Her restaurant was open 6 days a week, all night, Friday night and Saturday night, forever.
And she was there.
Or somebody was there. She was there most of the time. She wasn't always there because they opened at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
They opened at 6 a.m. and closed at midnight, except Friday nights they never closed. So she worked 70 hours. I figured it out once. Between picking up the meats down in the Brooklyn markets where, between doing all of that stuff and making sure people were there. If they weren't there, she'd get in the car and go back to work.
Wow.
She worked 70 hours every week.
What gave her that strength?
That was who she was. Her mom died in the pandemic in 1917. The big pandemic.
Yeah.
Her mom died then, and she just was that person.
So she was about 7 when her mom died.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then she loved her dad. And then, he was a great person. He was a great person. He was a piano tuner.
That's cool.
All up and down the East Coast, yeah.
That's an art.
Art. And so she was like this all the time.
She made you awesome.
And my brother, yeah.
I mean,
she was really an amazing.
That's cool.
Amazing person.
Well, that's awesome to hear because it would sound like it was a one-parent situation. So the fact that she did that, and not only just did it okay, she did it fantastically.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. She was always the person in charge. She was always.
When did she pass away?
She was 2002. She was 92.
Wow.
She was 92.
92.
Yeah. Yeah.
You think you're going to live to 92?
Yeah.
Easy.
Easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure. From what I know of you, you're a pleasure to be around. You have this candor and childlike joy to you. And I can tell by like your mannerisms that you don't have time for BS. I would imagine you'd actually just kind of get up and walk away from something. Or if a movie sucks, you just turn it off. You're not going to watch the rest of it. Like, you're going to capitalize on kind of each moment. I even appreciate sitting here for a while with me. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd have to say so. When I look at my life, I've done and so many things, and I just see life is to be lived like every day. I'm not the person you'll ever hear me say, "Oh boy, where did the time go?" Oh, I can tell you my life. I know. I lived like a lot of lives. So if it wasn't not always the right choices, but it doesn't matter. I just kept it moving. I really tell my friends all the time, keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
Keep it moving. There's a lot that we can do. We've got to forget about what we didn't do. Just keep it moving.
Yeah, and also and you're speaking my language, where I know far too many people who are living 8 years ago. They're in this bad mood, and you're like, "Hey, what happened to you?" And they're like, so and so did this to me, and I'm like, when was that? And they were like, 11 years ago. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
How are you still holding on to that? That person isn't thinking about you. I promise they're not. So you got to let that go.
Yeah.
Right? And that's amazing. I don't think you're that kind of person.
No.
Yeah.
I try not to be. That's the goal. I
Good for you.
trying to keep it moving. And there's so many, coming to Greenville has been just a wonderful experience. Having gone through everything I went through,
Yeah.
that 13 years, 2017 is when I went into a little cocoon for 3 years, where I was able to just relax for a minute. And then God released me down here, a new career as of 2019. And
Wow.
And
Just getting it done.
getting it done.
Good for you. It's awesome. Well, keep it going. It's been a pleasure, Barrie.
Thank you for this opportunity.
It's really the pleasure's on this side of the table.
Thank you.
Okay.